Today's episode is sponsored by Intara, implementing software and strategies that help manufacturers sell more faster. Visit them at intara.com.
Aerospace and defense manufacturing.
Machines and automation.
Additive manufacturing.
Smart manufacturing.
The global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. I'm David Muller, Senior Editor at SME Media, and I'll be your host today. We're joined by Andy Didick, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Intara. Andy is responsible for the overall business development and digital strategy for Intara's clients, which include the likes of industrial manufacturers and consumer brands. He serves as an e-commerce and digital transformation consultant with brand experience including Xerox, Textron, Simmons Beautyrest, Harman Audio, Teradata, BNY Mellon, and more. Thanks for joining us, Andy. We're glad to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Can we start by maybe getting a little bit more background on yourself and Intara?
Sure thing. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, David. On myself, well, I've been in the digital world in various roles for the past 20 plus years. I started my career in broadcast journalism. I was a long format print designer. I ran an on-site creative services agency for a Fortune 500 company for a while. And then I've been in various sales and project management roles over the years. And I currently lead a team of 7 or 8, we're growing now, consultants that are selling actively into industrial and consumer manufacturers. We're selling PXM consulting and implementations. The company Intara has been around for 25 years, or 25th year in business this year, founded in 1999. We were a remote company, but we were born out of an incubator program at East Tennessee State University, so our headquarters is still in East Tennessee. And we are a digital transformation systems integrator specializing in PXM. So that's a lot of words, but really what we're about is helping manufacturers and brands to ignite their digital transformation within their organizations in ways that help them to increase efficiency, save costs, and ultimately move away from manual processes and into automated ones, specifically using PIM and DAM for PXM.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. That's an interesting background. I saw when I was looking around doing some research, I saw Intara is described as a PXM consulting and implementation firm. I'm not sure all of our listeners are familiar with PXM. Can you kind of describe what PXM is all about?
Sure thing. It's an interesting term, especially I know a lot of the audience is involved in the actual manufacturing side of manufacturing, if you will. But PXM is a lot, it stands for Product Experience Management. So it really comes into effect on the selling side of products, and it has to do with the people, processes, and technologies that are involved in managing all of the product data and assets that are required to sell a product. And these principles are applicable whether you are selling, an aircraft engine or a computer motherboard or socks to consumers online. Every single product that gets sold anywhere, it has specifications to it, its dimensions, its height, its weight, descriptions, that type of thing. And it also has assets, images, videos, safety data sheets in the case of industrial, and other things like that need to be managed. And it started, years and years ago, it was enough to just have all of those things in one place about a product because the way that companies went to market was pretty straightforward. But today, where anyone can shop through any channel, anytime, again, that's true of B2B or B2C, it becomes really complicated to manage all of that data across all of those different sources. So product experience management is really about those disciplines that are helping to ensure that when that information gets to a buyer, that information is available, accurate, aligned, and applicable to them, regardless of what channel that they choose.
I got it. Okay, well, let's break it down a little bit further maybe, and let's talk about PXM then. So like B2C, for example, digital commerce, how would it work? What's Intara's role? with product experience management, PXM, and B2C digital commerce, for example?
Certainly. If you're looking at companies who manufacture goods for consumers to be the end buyer, again, there's so many different ways that they can go to market to do so. They can sell directly to consumers. They can sell to distributors who sell to retailers who sell to consumers, or they can sell directly to retailers who will then sell to consumers. But any way you look at it, if you think about where a product begins its life cycle, it's typically in a system like an ERP, which stands for Enterprise Resource Planning software, or in a PLM, which is Product Lifecycle Management software. And it begins in someone's head to create this product and associate a SKU with it. That information has to be, as the product is developed over time, that information gets added to within the organization. Again, this is well before it really enters the realm of PXM to manage that experience someone's having with the product. But in the consumer space particularly, we know from our research that it takes an average consumer, they will hit between 3 and 5 different channels before they make a purchase. So a channel could be a brick and mortar retail store. It could be an enthusiast website. It could be an e-commerce site. Maybe you visit multiple e-commerce sites and the manufacturer's website. And so if that information that gets presented is not consistent, it's not applicable to them across all of those channels, we know that consumers will readily abandon, really even faster than industrial buyers will. They will readily abandon that purchasing approach. And we see this all the time. We know, for example, through a tool called Digital Shelf Analytics, which is another software that allows you to scan all of the retail sites or end user sites where your product data is showing up. We know that 30% of products that are out there have missing or inaccurate data across a whole spectrum of industrial and consumer sides. On the consumer side, what that could look like is you see that product you want to buy has a certain, maybe it's a battery powered tool, for example, and that on one website it says the tool is 5 pounds, on another website it says it's 3 pounds. That immediately sows some uncertainty and doubt in a buyer's mind. And if they hit 2 or 3 of those types of things, or sometimes it's only one, then they'll abandon that purchase and not complete it. So the role of PXM, to come full circle, is examining from beginning to end within that business to consumer business. How does product data originate? At what point is it ready to go out into the wild, to be presented to someone to be able to make a purchasing decision? And then how can we aggregate all those data sources on the source side so that it can then be prepared by a product marketer or by a merchandiser to get that information enriched and ready to go out to the consumer so that it's consistent and syndicated out across all of the channels that are associated with it.
Do you work more in the B2C digital space or B2B or both?
We are about 50-50 in B2B and B2C. Yeah, our organization, Intara, is heavily focused in manufacturing and distribution. However, retail is, and we do have some retail clients, retail is also a major benefactor of PXM technologies, because when you think about a retailer, they're not in control of the product like a manufacturer is. They are at the mercy of whatever information gets sent to them from whomever is manufacturing. Distributors are in the same boat. So the more automated and computer-based that process is, the less likely there are to be errors, less likely there are to be returns, and all kinds of other measures of success on the retail side.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, how about let's talk a little bit about using PXM on the B2B side then in digital commerce. How would that work?
Absolutely. And this is a very big topic. It's got more aspects to it than we have time to cover completely today. But in short, the stakes are higher on the B2B side because the quantities are higher, the purchases are larger, the complexity is usually higher as well. And oftentimes, paradoxically, even though all of those things are true, the systems within a B2B environment are not as mature. You would be shocked. I am routinely when you go into sometimes a Fortune 200, 100 company, a very, very large entity, and the way that they're using Excel spreadsheets or Access databases to manage this data and manage these assets as opposed to some more sophisticated PXM systems. But the stakes are also higher because when you think about it, if you we talked about socks earlier being a B2C type of offering that's available. If you get data wrong about the height or weight of a sock, what happens? Really not a lot. The consumer might be unhappy and send it back, and it erodes some trust. That's important, but it's not critical. On the B2B side, if you get information wrong about allergens or the dimensions of a bolt that goes into an aircraft, or the safety data sheet that would accompany an industrial product that talks about the toxicity of it, the consequences are far worse. And yet, it still surprises me how many organizations in the B2B space are still using manual processes rather than a PXM approach to manage this data. Now, it's becoming less and less over time, and I'm pleased to say that as every year goes on, we're 10 years ago when we started really getting into this, you'd encounter really everyone you talk to would say, well, what's a PIM, a product information management software, or a DAM, a digital asset management software, which are two key softwares that go into the PXM approach. They wouldn't even know what it is. Nowadays, I'd say about 50% of our industrial customers, we're coming in to consult on how those systems are already deployed, getting them to work better together, or replacing one of those, which is a much, much better place to be. So in short, the stakes are higher on the B2B side, but the demands are just as great because I guess one other aspect I'd like to mention is that when you think about a manufacturer selling to a distributor, who again may sell through retail, or they may sell direct to a VAR or to someone else as well, there are two levels of data often that have to come with that. One is the per SKU, there's like pallet level data. So how many of these things fit on a pallet? How do they fit into a truck? How many, what kind of shelf warehousing space do I need for it? And then there's still the item level data that you need about the product itself, as well as the assets. So it does get a little bit more complicated on the B2B side, but the tools that you use to resolve those with PXM are the same.
Got it. Okay. So if I'm thinking, if I'm a manufacturer or brand, what's the expected business value of using PXM? Can you kind of talk about that, or what would be expected?
Sure thing. So this is complicated, and any question about ROI, it's really easy. I'm in sales. I've been in sales and consulting, which are sometimes one and the same, for the last 20 plus years. ROI is tricky because PXM is not just about buying a piece of software and jamming it into your existing processes and expecting a concrete return. There certainly are returns that are measurable, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But for manufacturers specifically, the process is much more holistic because you're putting in a PIM, you're putting in a DAM, those two softwares that manage the product data and the product assets, respectively. But you're also doing so with both systems with an eye towards the existing business processes that are in place. So you're looking at, again, how product data originates and how it's sourced, how it's enriched, how it gets ready to go out to market to represent your products. And you're streamlining those processes as you put software in place to ensure that they are well regulated and taken care of. And I'll introduce another term for you, David, which is called data governance. And that's the process in which we are consulting to develop data governance committees so that as new products are introduced, maybe new product categories are introduced, or new companies are acquired by larger companies, there is a process and a system in place to bring those into the PIM, DAM, PXM architecture so that it's not just starting off with more chaos and challenges as you go.
Could you maybe give us a few examples of businesses that have realized our ROI from PXM and kind of talk about what that looked like and how it works?
There are a lot of examples that I can give you. Let me talk through a couple of different ways in which PXM is valuable. For example, we work with a manufacturer of high-end power tools, and this company prides itself on listening to tradespeople in the field, finding out what their needs are, and then bringing a product to market very, very rapidly. So they are listening, developing, designing, manufacturing, shipping, and then retailing a brand new durable good product all within the span of 6 months. That is impossible to do scaled across retailers all over the US and the globe. That's impossible to do without having PXM in place to manage the product data. Things would just happen too fast across too many languages, too many geographies, if you didn't have systems in place to manage that. So being able to get things to market faster is an example of direct ROI. If you've got that tool to market 2 months faster than your competitor, that's 2 months of purchasing that happens, brand awareness, all that stuff. You also have reductions in returns. This is something that one of our software partners talks about quite a bit, that we've become a society of chronic returners. And we will buy things from Amazon and then, buy 10 pairs of pants and ship back one that we don't want. And a big part of that reason is because of the psychological paradox with choice, where if you give people too much choice, they're not happier, they're actually really stressed out. Because in an example with jeans, and this is true with industrial products too, you've got, instead of having 3 to choose from, you've got 10, which means there is a 90% chance in a buyer's either conscious mind or subconscious mind that they are going to get it wrong. So by ensuring accurate product information, you're taking one level of anxiety away, having it consistent across the board that you're making the right decision. And we see that principle playing into reduced returns across every industry. And then the most direct way that you're seeing return on investment for any type of manufacturer, distributor, or retailer is in the reduction of complexity and person hours that are required for managing this data. We work with some very large companies. We work with some smaller regional companies, and the story is always the same. We do some primary research when we come in to find out and audit how is product data being managed today. And you might be surprised to learn that in a large company, a couple $2 billion, if they are selling through retail and they have a digital asset management system in place that is managing their images, for example, we routinely encounter companies that have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people using that system. That's just one PXM system. And when you look at the way, the efficiencies that you can gain, there are many times in which people are spending over an hour or two trying to locate assets to put together in a sales sheet or a data sheet or whatever they need to do for their product marketing job. And we have direct examples. In one case, we were able to uncover 10,000 person hours, which is 5 full-time people in a year, that we were able to free up for a luxury clothing manufacturer by automating processes with PXM. And that was actually those 2 main processes that we automated. So that's a huge ROI. And in other cases where you've got these thousands of people working, we've been able to uncover 100,000, 150,000 person hours that can be saved via automation and helping to reorganize things the way they are. And I have to say one thing about that, because that talking about saving time can be a triggering comment for some people. They'll hear that and go, "Oh man, they want to replace people with machines." And I want to tell you very explicitly that is not what's happening here. These companies have people who are very well paid, who are very, very intelligent, very skilled, that are stuck in Excel spreadsheets all day long. And that's the type of work that we're talking about eliminating and freeing up those smart, talented people to create real content, better content, manage relationships with retailers, and the higher order things that people are inherently better at than machines.
You're getting people out of the weeds. So maybe it'd be a really basic way of saying it, right? I mean, you're organizing things that should be, or you're getting things organized that are otherwise so disparate, can grow chaotic and disparate at some of these assets and data management systems.
You're 100% correct, David. And you think about the scale here. In some companies, PXM, I'll be clear too, isn't for every single company. Every company can benefit from it. But if you're in a case where, some folks are only selling through government or something, and they've got, one channel that they're selling through and it's highly regulated, that might be an example where you may have a limited return from PXM. It's still a great investment, but the real home run use cases are companies that are selling through a lot of different channels. So they're selling through both national chain distributors, which have their own demands that they're going to make on a manufacturer. You have to give me data in this way, in the format I want, as well as mom and pop stores and that type of thing all over the country. Because you figure in organizations that don't have PIM and DAM and PXM in place, they have a person often dedicated to each one of those accounts whose only job is to get that information in the right order for those groups. And these systems can do that. It can automate 90% of that process for them. So you're absolutely right. It's about getting out of the weeds.
how do we get started? If I'm a manufacturer or a business or, any kind of entity or business that wants to get started with PXM, how do we get started?
Well, there are a couple of things that are important to know, and I like to say these things up front in any type of engagement where, if you're thinking about PXM, you can ask yourself a couple of questions. One is, how many people in our organization touch our product data? How many places do we have where product data originates or product images in the case of a dam? And how many places are all of those things going? And if you add all three of those up together and you're above 10 or 20, you should consider yourself a good candidate for some type of PXM software. The place to start is by engaging, of course, we'll recommend engaging a knowledgeable partner in this space. The reason that's so important is that these tools, every business is so different. The software tools are like Lego sets that you could disassemble and reassemble to work in any way you want to in 1,000 different ways. And so unless you have expertise in deploying these internally and you've done it a lot, there are often ways you can configure them that might paint you into a corner, so to speak. So starting by contacting a knowledgeable partner is a great idea. If you aren't ready for that yet, there's a ton of thought leadership that is out there. We at Intara publish over 50 long-form pieces of content a year, including original research, specifically for U.S. manufacturers. You can find that on our website. That is all free to access and download. And there are a variety of places online too where you can hit conferences and other things just to get knowledgeable. But these projects always start with an assessment of where are we at today, what's current state, what business goals are we trying to achieve, and then what's the most cost-effective way forward that can prioritize where we're going to get the biggest ROI over time.
Excellent. So a lot of good information out there to get started. Also can reach out to a professional like yourself and go that way. So Andy, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. It was really interesting and engaging conversation for me. If listeners want to learn more, I usually ask where should they go, but you mentioned the website already. I assume that's a good place to start.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got a great LinkedIn channel that's very active as well, but our website, intara.com, is a fine place to start, and we look forward to more participating in the discussion about PXM.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much again. And to stay up to date about what's happening in manufacturing today and to hear more podcasts, visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org.